David Harper, if you could just open us up in a word of prayer.
Family. And so is this huge for young kids, older kids, adults as well. And so we need some scriptures. We need Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 12 through 20. Sophie, you got it. Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 12 through 20. David, can you get John 17, 14 through 19? John 17, 14 through 19. Tania, could you read for us? I need Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 13. Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 13. And I need Daniel, Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. All right, cool. And then we'll pick up more at the turn. All right. So the digital age is huge. We're going to talk about digital concepts today. We're not going to get in deep. There are a million ways to do this. At work, what I do is people try to get around the regulations. So my job is to set, I call them traps. I set traps in place so they just can't go that way. And just force them to do it the right way, make compliance the only way is how I say it. And you can do that digitally. But really what our kids need is not just a filter or a hands-off approach. They really need us as parents to have a hands-on approach. And if you're a kid this morning, you understand what I'm saying. This is why you want your parents involved in your life, because there's a threat out there that you need to be protected from. I'll never forget the first men's discipleship that I took one of my sons to, and there's Pastor Ruby, and he's preaching about, do you know the Old Testament story about where the man and his concubine came into the square, and people are saying, don't stay here in the square, and the men came and violated that lady, the concubine there at the square, and he ended up cutting up her body into 12 and sending them out to the 12 tribes, and it was called the open square. And I remember that because it was a very graphic service, and Paul was sitting on one side, I was sitting on the other side, my son is sitting in the middle, and Paul and I just both look at each other and go, wow, what a great service to come to. I remember that clearly. But this is along the same line, because if we're not careful, we can walk into the open square and we can cause our own damage along the way. So let's get this started. Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 12 through 20.
So it was when the Jews who dwelt near them came that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us, and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, every one to his work. So it was from that time on that half of my servants worked at construction, while the other half held the spears, the shields, the bows, and wore armor. And the leaders were behind all the house of Judah. Those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves, so that with one hand they worked at construction, and with the other held a weapon. Every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built, and the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. Then I said to the nobles, the rulers, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there, our God will fight for us.
So, this is Nehemiah. He's giving instructions to rebuild the wall. There's a couple of interesting comments here, things to look at. But the first part we want to look at, he goes, so I place guards, armed guards, behind the lowest parts of the wall. Why the lowest parts? John? It's breached. It's open. Yeah, it's vulnerable, right? It's easy to access. It's easy to get enemies across it. You can engage easier that way. And the enemy's target is the most vulnerable. We are living in a world that is diametrically opposed to what God wants to do. What does that term diametrically mean? In your own words. You mean, know what I'm saying, Sophia?
I don't know, I always thought diametrically think of diagonal, like you're over here and they're literally like on the opposite side of you.
You have it. Complete opposites. Okay? It's like we're all going left, they're all going right. We're all going forward, they're going backwards, right? It's diametrically the opposite direction. And we live in a world that is not conducive to living for God. John 17:14 through 19.
I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Thou hast sent me into the world, even as I have also sent them into the world. For their sakes I sanctify myself, that they may also be sanctified through the truth.
So what is Jesus saying here? He's saying that they're in the world and the world's against them, but that they can remain in the world. So what does that mean? That you can make it. Amen? It doesn't mean you're in a sinking ship and it's all going to die and why did God put me here? God knows that it is possible to live for God here on this earth. Amen? It is not so corrupt that you can't exist here. And with that in mind, the enemy's agenda is against your life and your family. And it's strategic. He has a mechanism to make it work. The name is escaping me, where they were trying to thwart the Roman army and the Trojan horse, that's what it is. And they entered the city gates and they were inside the Trojan horse. Here's a gift. We just want to give you a gift. And they waited till everyone went to bed and then they attacked. You see cases of this in the Bible where David's sons go to attack those that had violated their sister Dinah, and they strategically made it so all the men were unable to fight, and then they attacked. It was a strategic battle. I want to tell you, the enemy of your soul is strategic. And he has a mechanism that is prospering even today to get into you and into your kids. Do you know that you are shaped by what you read and watch and hear? Okay? So the media dominates our kids. It absolutely dominates our kids. We live in a media-saturated world. I was telling Pastor Gooding yesterday that when my daughter was going to high school, that we had given her a flip phone so she can, because we live in this big bad city called Santa Rosa, and giving her this cell phone. She can call us if anything goes bad or we can't find her, pick her up. And she told me, we were at a back to school night, and she goes, Dad, I need a cell phone that I can see my grade, because my teacher is telling me to look things up on my cell phone during class. This is partly my textbook, if you will, to have to look things up at the school. I'm the only one in my class without a phone. And I know kids always say, I'm the only one, Dad. And so ended up getting her one, and Matthew got one as he got into high school, and then Nicholas is right behind, and he's getting one. And the difference is that in Becca and Matthew's age, it was almost like a need or a requirement. But now, you know what they're doing? they're taking those phones and they're locking them up. They're keeping them out of the classroom finally, because it's not helping, it's distracting, right? We live in a media-saturated world. Everywhere you look, in the home, outside the home. We were in Japan recently. We were in Japan's Times Square, I think one of them. We were in, I forget exactly what it's called, not Electric City, but Electric City. And we were there, and it's video games, 3, 4, 5-story stores, just video games. People in the zone, not communicate, just playing their game. We were at Shibuya Crossing. It's like another Times Square. Thousands of people are crossing, and there are billboards advertising this, that, the other thing. Thousands of people every crossing. And I'm just like, man, the prominence of media today. You would get on the train in Japan, and Japanese culture is very different, we found out. It's like impolite to talk on the train, we found. And it's like you get on the train, you're on there with 100 people, but it's complete silence except for the train. And everyone's looking at their phone. And so the Pew Research Center says nearly 97% of teenagers are online every day, with a substantial number using the internet, and they quoted this, almost constantly. Have you ever seen a teenager addicted to their phone, or you're talking to them and then they're like, sorry, yeah, and distracted immediately by their phone? How are kids, some of them are spending, the average is 4.8 hours per day on the internet, with some as high as 9 hours per day on their phones or on the internet. Who's influencing them? You or the internet? Because let's be honest, they're not reading books while they're doing that. They're just watching things, right? How are kids consuming media today? Back in the day, there's a big push within our fellowship because TV is just a huge time waster. And also because it promoted immorality and demonic things along the way. And people, but back in the day, it was like you had to go rent a VHS, right? Do you know what VHS is? It's a big tape player, right? And you had to go rent that. And I remember doing that as a kid with my mom. And then we upgraded. We went to DVDs. And then it went to Blu-ray, and that was a real quick progression. And now you can stream. You don't have to have any of that fancy equipment because you can just stream whatever you want. And so what happens is people go get their ice cream, or let's say they're eating broccoli, I don't know. But they binge watch things for hours. They watch an entire season of something in one night. Or every version of a movie, in one evening. And so the kids are consuming media with TVs back in the day, but now it's almost all computers and the web. And even if it's not a computer like in the living room or whatever, it's on the phone, It's at school. It's when they're hanging out with their friends. And it happens sometimes in small doses. I don't know if you know much about today's society, but anything that's longer than like 30 seconds, you lose their attention. Back in the day, there was an old crazy movie called The Blair Witch Project. It's the first one I remember that was like this. It was like the show was shot with people screaming right into the camera, It was like a lot of quick little sequences. And it was like this. I got motion sick I saw a quick snippet of how they did it. I'm like, oh, dude. But you know what? Every show is like that now. And even if you watch, it's like they zoom in, they zoom out, this way, and looking over here and looking over there and moving around because you can't stay still. And can I tell you, as kids come into the church, you have to understand that is what they're accustomed to. We have to sit here? What? and that is just the way it works, okay? And so it helps you understand. It happens in small doses, a little bit at a time. Hey, dude, check out this video. 30 seconds here, 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here. And it happens without supervision. You know, phones, you could say, I know everything that my kid watches. But if they have any access to the internet through themselves, through their friends, through whatever, you do not know what they're watching. Well, I have a history. There's ways around that. And I'm almost afraid to tell you how it works, because then the kids are like, oh, that's how you do it. It happens socially that today's kids sit around and play video games together. It's a joke, but you see a group of teenagers at a table, and they all have their phones up like this, and I'll tell them once in a while, I go, are you guys all texting each other? Because, you know, sometimes I think that that's what's happening, you know, because there's no communication. And I don't know if you've noticed, but today's teenager and the generation that's rising up, they have a hard time communicating their feelings. They know how to give an emoji, but they have a hard time expressing what they're trying to say because they're not used to doing it that way. And it becomes a default response. 5 bored seconds, and it's like, you're talking to them, and you're like, and they're not responding, and you look over, and it's like headphones are in. I'm like, hello, I'm right here. I was still talking to you. Oh, you paused for a minute, you know? And that's all it takes. And the problem is, it's become a default response for parenting. That we use technology to control the behavior of the child by becoming a digital babysitter or a digital occupier. So the threat in living in a digital age, we live in a world that's absolutely opposed to Christ and family. Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 13. If we're not careful, we can replace God with a digital idol or a digital God. All they're doing in Israel is they're walking through the land, they're getting to the promised land, and what's happening is they're going through a smorgasbord of idols. There's a little religion here, there's a little religion here, there's a little idol here, and all they're doing is they're moving through the land, and they're picking up on this little piece here, a little piece there, a little piece there. You know what's so amazing to watch is you stand back out of the social media and the media circle. You can watch people change based off what they're watching. You can see them respond certain ways. You can see them dress certain ways. Everyone wants to be an original, I know that. But how come all the originals all look alike? Because they're all following each other, right? And it's a little tweak to the base model, if you will, but they all look the same because the media is influencing them. You know, there are times that people struggle spiritually because they've spent more time entertaining themselves than feeding themselves with the Word of God, than reading a book. Reading is good for you. Reading books will help you to formulate a thought process. You know, when you communicate anything, not just in the church, but anything, you have to get the people that are listening to you from point A to point B. But social media and shorts and TikTok don't help you do that. You're like, so anyways, whatever. And the other person's like, what are you talking about? Well, I told you. No, you didn't. What did I hear? And so that's it. But you have to be able to explain what you're talking about, what's the problem, how options to resolve it, and how you've chosen to resolve it. And some of you, I just lost you right there. But you have to, there's a logical sense to how you communicate issues. And I know in the social media world it works well to just a quick little stamp or someone in the church, we were communicating in a group, we were getting ready to go somewhere, and we had sent some responses back and forth. We're trying to get logistics together. And all of a sudden, across my phone are these red lips and a black background. I'm like, what is this person trying to say? But, you know, these impressions, I guess, you can make with your phone. I guess one of the kids had kissed the phone. And it came through to the group chat that way. And I'm like, well, bro, I know you care about us in the holy kiss, but I'm all right, man. But that's how today's society is communicating. Why is the selfie camera a higher quality than the other camera? Because we have to take pictures of ourselves. They haven't gotten there yet, but they're getting close. So the media that is available to your family has an agenda, and it is giving a message, all right? And listen, today is not just about the content, but it's about the method of how they get it across to all of us. You know, when we're bored, when we're lonely, when we're tired, when we're stressed, right? Watch and ice cream, right? When we're happy, when we're mad, when we're lonely, no one wants to talk to me. I'll just sit here on my phone. And the second leading cause, there's a research study that went out. The second leading cause of death among children between the ages of 12 and 14 in the United States is suicide. One of the main contributing factors to kids ending their own lives is social media. Pastor Gooding told me about a book that he's reading. It's entitled The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring, and this is the subtitle, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. See, it's not just what's being promoted, it's what we do to our brains. There's a title for your brain. It says the brain is plastic. And what that means is that it's changeable. That even people after strokes can relearn things, not through the normal pathways, but they can find other pathways to accomplish the same thing. Your brain is plastic. And there's a book out there by Droid, not Drudge, but Droid, and talks about the recovery of people from brain injuries and how your brain can rewire itself and learn new things. And so just because if you read yourself here or your family here, it's not over, right? I'm just setting the case. Remember, what's the issue? What's the problem? We're in the problem phase, and that depresses some people, but it's true. But we can fix things, all right? We can rewire things, so don't lose hope this morning. The most sinister side of technology is the immediate access to other people. Not just to the media, but now you can talk to anyone around the world just like this. And no one knows about it. Daniel 12:4. I think that's you, Dominic. 12:4.
You, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase.
Until the time of the end. It's a future time. Daniel's part real time, part prophetic. And here he says, till the end of time, and what does he say at the end? Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. You know, when we don't, I always use the joke that Pastor Gooding uses words that I don't understand. But back in the day, I would have to write them down on my notebook, go home and pull the dictionary out, and look up whatever the heck he was talking about. Just so I was on the same page, right? But now you don't have to do that. Now it's like, hey, Siri. Right? Yeah, exactly. Huh? That's how a lot of people talk. Huh? And got myself caught in a trap there. So today we're available to immediate access to information, but we're also enabled to communicate around the world. Isn't that amazing how God knew that so many years ago? When kids are left vulnerable to media, there's access to people that you wouldn't approve of. Social media is an open door for unimaginable evil to be let into your home. There's always ways to access questionable material on any smart device, with almost no exceptions. Well, I have a filter. Great. There's ways around them. I'm hesitant to say how, but all you have to do is, if you want to crack into NSA, just get a teenager. They know how to do that, all right? If you need access into the Russian network, they can figure it out. We're still trying to figure out how to change our oil. They've got that figured out, right? Those filters are good. They're beneficial, but they're not the end-all, be-all, right? There's times I read articles to help people and to think about things. And years ago, I was reading an article about a filter for your phone, and this one person had commented, it was towards Verizon, and they go, we need you to increase the security of your filter to block more porn and to do this and do that. And someone commented back in this little chat, I'm trying to figure out how a filter to help people and how can we protect people. And this one person got it right. They go, the issue isn't the filter. The issue is the person. And so you got to change the person to stop this, or you got to change the access. You got to change other things, you know. You know, the majority of questionable material doesn't just come because of an internet search. It's not like you're typing in how to make a nuclear bomb. You know, that's not what's going on, right? What is tannerite? How big is the explosion in my house, right? If you've never seen tannerite, you should check it out. And, you know, that's not what they're doing, okay? Most of it is because today's society, some of you will understand this, it's like a video here. And it's almost like you see their head moving at the same time, right? Just, you know, and what happens is, I'm looking up funny cat videos. Oh, now we got dog videos. Who is that? Why are they dressed that way? What's going on? Just a video, just out of the blue. And now all of a sudden the algorithm in the background gives you more of them because you watched it. And that's how it works. And pretty soon, now your appetite is more of that than funny dog and cat videos. Okay. I didn't know what this was. Someone had to explain it to me. With Snapchat, that, you know, the messages were intentionally made to delete themselves automatically. Why would you do that? To hide something, right? Why is it so prominent in the drug industry? Why is it so prominent in sexting? You know, what a crazy thing that our kids, what they're doing, you know, online. Kids can hide what they're doing on their phone. It's not really that hard in the private messaging world. Everyone's got privacy screens, so you can't look over. Go ahead, John.
When I was in high school, like the popular thing was trying to go like on the dark web or something, like just to see if they could do it. And it's like, turns out it wasn't that hard to find out how to do it.
It's called. Well, let's play some background music. It's going to get dark in here really quick. And, you know,
No, you wouldn't live in the house.
isn't it amazing how, how algorithms nowadays, there's a big push. We're making, I think it's called Boyle's Law. It's where technology, the form factor gets smaller after so many years. And I work in that technology space now. I don't understand what they do, but I can see the physical product. We've gone from cards that are like this big to take care of the entire PC. Now it's smaller. And the next is something called nanotechnology. You know what nano is? Itty bitty injectable kind of stuff, right? Why is it so small? Because we can put your smartphone, it has more computing power than the rocket that went to the moon. Did you know that? More computing power than what went to the moon. That's how Boyle's Law works. I think it's Boyle's Law. I might be incorrect there. But the law is that over so many periods of time, the form factor will get smaller, and it continues and continues, and it's gone that way over the course of time. That's why your phones are smaller, more powerful, because to get this, when computers first came out, they were called mainframes, and they took up entire rooms. But now there's a technology push to go to this AI thing, and it's headed that way. Your iOS or your OS on your phone is going that way. The computers are going that way. There are jobs being replaced by not just chatbots, but smart chatbots. Some of you in your jobs, you are responsible for training an AI machine. You're teaching it. At work, I ran across someone who's training an AI machine to do their job. And because they learn how you do it and how you have to, I call it tweaking, but modifying something to make a problem work out. And when they learn those things, they can begin to generate answers all by themselves. The easiest way for me to look up a regulation now is to just type it into the AI chat box that we have at work. I don't have to dig for hours. It's all right there. And I want to tell you, that's the next thing coming. Kids can hide things from us. I'm sorry, kids, if the doors on your bedrooms get taken off. If there's also security cameras in your house, I don't know. But, I mentioned Snapchat. The messages just disappear, right? Well, what did they send you? I can't show you. It's just not there no more. The Trump shooter in Pennsylvania, they tried to access his media accounts, and they were what? Encrypted. It took time to get that out. And Apple has some crazy thing where they won't let people into their iOS, and they won't break into it without certain court orders. And yeah, it's not easy to get into. It can be hidden. Technology-wise, our kids are smarter than we are. And it's not a good kid or a bad kid. Well, I have good kids. They won't do that. You would be amazed. Well, I have a bad kid. I ain't trusting that kid for nothing. But they might have more sense than the good kid. And you can change a good kid into a bad kid by what they watch. So, social media produces temptation and long-term consequences for our kids. Kids are getting trapped, boys and girls, into pornography at younger ages. The average age for a boy is 11 years old. Getting pulled into it. How does that happen? Because they're just flipping through videos. All right? By 15, 92% of all boys have been exposed. James 1, 14 and 15, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. Jesus said in John 8:34, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. There are things that develop into habits, and the more you look at things, the more likely you are to engage in them. It can be incredibly difficult to break. Pornography addiction is the single greatest destroyer of men and relationships in ministry. We used to have business meetings. You hear about the business meetings for pastors. And when Pastor Wayman Mitchell led those meetings, at the beginning of every meeting, in the business part of it, he publicly announced evangelists or pastors that had been removed from ministry because of pornography. Every meeting. And it wasn't like, I'm going to go rent this. And it was almost always internet-based. Almost always. And it's a huge destroyer of men and now women. Women have been getting caught up in that. And the majority of content viewed in apps, like in the YouTube app, in the TikTok app, in the Instagram app, those aren't filtered by your content filters. And sometimes they go right through your provider, your cell provider. They have filters that they provide. Your internet provider, your browser, your server. Like here at the church, we have a server and it controls the Wi-Fi. And just so you know, it does block some of the things that you're trying to look up. And it does tell me when it does that, and it tells me who it is. Got really quiet in here. I'm just joking. It doesn't tell me. I know who it is. It's crazy because it can go back to, if you look something up, I have the same one at home. You can look at it. If you look something up, it says this is what was looked up, and who looked it up? This phone, this computer, and it's amazing. And just the other day, there was something that tried to get into the church internet or the church network, and it said intrusion blocked, and it tells me who tried to download it. I'm like, oh, thank you. But I'm not saying that to be scared, but even with all that, things get through. And it can still be done. And we have to regulate the medium instead of the content. That even with a brick wall, things break through those brick walls eventually. And so you have to stop the medium somehow. Appetites determine direction. If your answer is, well, my kids, they only watch cartoons and they only watch, chosen things. They only watch White Thing by Disney, They only watch, that's the most radical thing they watch. They watch just Christian movies. They only watch Veggie Tales. Can I tell you, they're not going to want to watch Veggie Tales at 18. But what they have learned is how to eat media and to engage in media. So, the point of all this is the content is dangerous, but the medium or the mechanism to get it into us is worse. It creates an appetite to consume. I work with people today who grew up in the digital age, and they can't stay off their phones. And their jobs are in jeopardy because they can't stay off their phones. And they work their jobs like this. I deal with injuries. We had an injury where someone tripped and fell. Why? Because they were looking at their phone. We have people walk into glass walls because they're looking at their phone. Okay, we have people run into each other. Why? Because there are certain places your phone isn't allowed. It's just too dangerous to do that, right? And so I know they're super busy, but I work with people, and the latest generation is making it. It's not just because they can't accept criticism, because they haven't learned communication through media. But they're stuck on their phones, and their jobs are in jeopardy because instead of working, they're watching things for hours on the job. So you can't do that and survive in the real workplace. So Proverbs 23, 1 through 3, then I want to open it up to you. When you sit down to eat with a ruler, consider carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite. Do not seduce or do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food. Some of the things that we allow kids to do, even what we allow ourselves to do, is deceptive. And we think it's all right, it's not bad, but you have to think of the long-term end game. What is this going to do? When my wife and I buy cars, we think as our kids were growing up, used to be, kids are small, but something happens, it's like they're weeds, they just grow really fast, right? And so what we would always think is, when our boys, like when we bought the truck, when our boys are 16, 17, and 18, how tall are they going to be? Well, if they're 6 foot like I am, they're not going to fit into this little car that we were thinking of, right? I get in the back seat and my knees are in the back, and I go, I don't want their knees in my back all day, right? And so this one has some leg room in the back, heck, And when the kids were younger, it was great to separate them into 3 rows. Just go back there. Space. But we always think down the road, where is this going to be? And what you have to think about with media is, where is this going to take me in 10 years, 5 years, whatever, the long-term game. So any thoughts or comments from you? Amen, Mara.
I've been watching this thing about, it actually got started on social media. It's called Escaping the Twin Flames. And it's these 2 people that went on YouTube and they started making this kind of cult thing where you could find your twin flame or the love of your life. And so all these people that were vulnerable are weak at one point in their life, join this thing, and they're taking these classes where they pay $200-$300. And it got so big to the point where they're telling them, oh, you belong with a woman, and it's same-sex marriage. People are getting sex transfer, it's just insane. And so there's these people that got out, and they're talking about all the trauma, and they're trying to sue these 2 people, but they're completely getting away with it. And I went and looked up their website, and they have all these things just nonsense of oh, you could be a girl and have a masculine twin flame, and you belong to these people are turning into it's just insane how much these people are doing. And so
correct.
It's so scary because I would never think that things like that are going on, but you just never know what's going on out there.
Correct.
And people are using social media to do that.
Correct. What you watch also dictates how you react in situations.
Yeah.
Why? If you watch stories about cheaters, you're always going to think your partner or your spouse is cheating on you. Right? Where were you? I was at work. Where were you? What's it to you? Right? And that's how you begin to think, because that's what you've been watching. If you look up videos about a medical condition, you're going to come up with 10 different answers. Oh, I'm dying. That hurt. Oh, I'm dying. It's radiation poisoning. It's when I went by the Navy base. I knew it. I got exposed. It was Chick-fil-A milkshake. I think that's what it was. Whatever. Right? It's hurting me. What you're watching influences how you think. And, if you watch things about people responding and running from the cops and chasing, don't say anything. And, just beating people up, and your natural response is, someone violates me, I'm just going to go slash their tires. Right? Road rage, right? Or whatever it is, right? But what you're watching influences your decisions. and how you respond and what you do. Okay, so yes, you got to be careful. Sophia.
Sometimes, too, like, you know, our kids are in school, or maybe there was other people, and like, Rachel asked me the other day if she could watch a show called Unicorn Academy. I had never even heard of it before. And, so I looked it up, and it was, like, not really a good show. They're talking about, like, black magic, and they were saying how, like, some of the kids are kind of sassy on the show, and, like, talking back to the parents. And there was a whole, like, parent forum about, like, we don't think this is, like, a great show for younger kids. And then she asked me about SpongeBob, and I'm like, how'd you hear about SpongeBob? Like, I've never watched it. So I was looking up that show, and they were saying that they actually did a study on children who watched SpongeBob versus those who didn't. And the ones who did had a harder time paying attention because the show, like what you spoke to earlier, is so quick, and like the flashing and just really fast pace. The kids watching the show had a hard time paying attention in school.
It's like their minds are going so fast.
Yeah.
They've gotten, and if you can just apply that fastness to like solving a problem, like instant math wizard right there, instant science wizard. You know. But yes, true, very true. Anybody else? Liz. You're gonna get more of it, yeah. So I want to make a statement. You can clear your history. You can clear the cache on your computer. You can reset the filter and the block sites on your filter program, but you can't reset your mind. All right? So you can start from scratch on all those things and start feeding good things, but it's almost like you have to take dominion over that, and you have to purge that content from your head and move on. All right?